Okay, my friends, I'd like to see things solved, and one of the major things we have right now, wars and hatred and violence against other groups perceived as threats. And why are they threats? Well, what's the reason for wars? Many potential reasons, including competition over territory and resources, historical rivalries, grievances, self-defense against aggressor. Well, it's always going to be push to shove. It's going to say, I need something that you have and I want to take it from you. Or you end up with having these fights and the violence escalates, and then you end up with a tyrant. Then the tyrant he says, I'll solve all our problems, and he says that ends up with violence and hatred and war, and then you have division, and then when that thing gets settled, not settled necessarily, it gets concluded, you have a slaughter. And then the whole cycle starts again. There is no way of getting out of it except if we had free energy. And I think we can do that. If everybody had something for free, and had all the energy you want for no problem, and you could carry it around in a little box just like this. Just like that. Instead of going around checking for radiation, you would go around with your own little box, magnet, that would be your power device. You could have this in your car, run your car. You could have this in your house, run your house. It wouldn't take much to do this, I'm almost sure. And I'm going to show you right now. But unless we could have free energy for everybody, we're never going to stop wars. I thought this over and over and over, and you're never going to end up with having anything other than a tyrant come up and say, I'll solve the problems. And that's when you have war and hatred and division and violence. Okay, this is really important today. I've been really thinking a lot about how can you stop wars? How can you stop tyranny? How can you stop all of those things that are the bad things that cause violence and slaughter and division and all of that stuff? And I couldn't think of anything whatsoever. There's literally no way when people are vying for the same resources and the same territories and the same good things for themselves, they eventually one tyrant will take over and force everybody to do what they want, and then they'll be rich as hell and everybody else will be slaving in the fields. And that is really the progression of humanity through up till the exact present time. Now, I know a way now to get out of this, and there's only one way. And I'll show you that way right now. And it's the only way I can think of. Otherwise, it always leads to violence, division, hatred, slaughter, repression, tyranny, totalitarianism, famine, destruction. Okay, this is, I'm going to just play this. I did this just a couple of days ago. And this is Gibbs Free Energy. Looks promising, and it does. And I explained that I understand this stuff, and I do. And this is the only way we're ever going to have peace and happiness on Earth, is to have everybody have free energy, and then they can control their own lives. Right now, it's a fight for resources. If you had free energy, when you see what this is capable of doing, it can do literally everything. And now I have some enhancements that I'm going to be adding to the prototype. Well, I don't have a prototype, to be honest with you. I have the theory behind this, and that's why I want others to do this. But I am also going to be adding the Van de Graaff generator, Tesla coil, and frequency modulators to the mix of this electron showers, because when it's in the electron shower mode, you can manipulate these particles and build your own particles if you do it the correct way, and you can certainly harvest the extreme increase in energy. So I'm going to play this, only a few minutes long. All right, so I'm going to walk out of the room, just listen, and then I'll come back and we'll discuss what I feel is the only way we'll ever have peace on Earth. Because whenever there's a struggle and a fight, you always end up with a tyrant. You always end up with a leader that ends up being self-motivated. But you have to understand, that guy is under threat. So there's never any unthreatened anybody until everybody is equal and free. And the only way everybody will be equal and free is free energy. So now listen to this now. Okay, my wonderful friends, this is getting more and more exciting by the moment. 50 years ago, literally, I was looking into Gibbs free energy, and I can prove that right there because that's the papers that I was, this just as a real little blip about it. But if you change the Gibbs free energy, you still have to have the same pressure, the same temperature, and an enclosure, and nothing in it can change. Nothing changes, but you extract energy from it. It's almost unbelievable, and I always thought it was. However, with this Venturi, we can make a completely reversible process in a self-contained system. So we can have this free, oh, here it is, here's exactly what you have to do. Thermodynamics, that means temperature and all of the rest that goes along with temperature. Gibbs free energy is a thermodynamic potential, it has power that can be used to calculate the maximum reversible work. So it goes one way and goes the other way. That may be performed by this system at a constant temperature. This is key, constant temperature and pressure. So we're not crushing it to make it heat up. We're not pressurizing it. We're not adding heat to it. We're just using it in a certain way that we can get free energy. Now listen, Gibbs free energy is exactly what I have. See, right down here. That was 50 years ago. It's the exact same thing. Gibbs free energy, measured in joules, is the maximum amount of non-expansion work that can be extracted from this system. It's a closed system. Nothing gets out, nothing goes in. Whatever you get out of it is power. It can exchange heat and work with its surroundings, but not matter. So we can do work with heat is nothing more than electricity. You run your electric stove, and it's all is electricity. Now, this maximum can be attained only in a completely reversible process. Now I'm going to show you what our completely reversible process is, and that is free energy. And that I wanted to do 50 years ago. And if I had somebody helped back then, we'd be all driving for free now. Alright, to get free energy, that's the requirements. You can't change the pressure, you can't change the temperature, you cannot destroy the matter. All we're doing is taking light from a laser, and it's actually disintegrating and recombining, and that's where the energy shows up. So this is our Gibbs closed system. You used to have a closed box. Now, you've got your laser, it's doing this thing here, and we got a collector that's collecting right here, which is extreme amounts of energy, and it's feeding it into a battery or whatever you want, and then you feed off your power out. Because once you collect it there, you can do anything you want with it, because all you got is electrons. Now, you could oscillate it through different ways and turn it into AC, DC, anything you wanted to do. You could put diodes and then Zener diodes and all kinds of things to regulate the voltages, and you can do anything you want. Once you got the electrons, you're good to go. And so now, if you... Okay, now, I'm going to stop it here, but I want you to know that this is the most basic form that I was showing it in. It's an enclosed system. You don't put any pressure into the atmosphere. You don't exude anything. You harvest the electrons from the atmosphere. You use them through your enclosed system, which is motors and lights and whatever it is, and then they go and start back in and do the same process again, still in the same enclosure. You never change anything in here. You don't add anything, you don't take anything away. You just enhance the value of the light, and then you use that enhanced value to power all kinds of things. Alright, I'm showing this in the most basic raw form. I have enhanced with the theory a little bit using a Tesla coil to infuse excessive amounts of electrons, and then also a Van de Graaff generator to be able to manipulate how much. It's almost like a regulator. And then there was something else. Oh yeah, the frequency modulators to modulate how much frequency, so we can literally, I think, maybe even build our own molecules to order by setting them up at certain frequencies. Let me show you why I say that, because Bruspup did a I think it was Bruce Pup, did a video on salt shaking. But anyway, whoever it was, I'll show you in a second. Yeah, it's Bruce Pup. Now, I'm just going to turn the sound down, and I appreciate them. You know, they got 18 million hits on this. And what they're doing here is they have a frequency generator, and that's what I was talking about before, frequency modulator, how fast we shake the thing. And all they're doing is shaking that plate, even though it's saying it's a tone generator, but that's all it is how fast it shakes. Now, as the pitch tone increases, you get more complex patterns. You may be starting out with a molecule well, you're going to start out with hydrogen, and that's a hydrogen. Okay, and it can only have one little particle in one of those little spots. Then you move up to where you have helium. Well, that's hydrogen and helium. Now you're into the row 2 here of the periodic chart, and you're into the rule of 8, where you make bigger and bigger molecules. But the key you want to take off here, watch, let me just get to the next one and we'll stop. All right, here we go. 2041 hertz, that's 2041 shakes per second. And when it does that, all of these little particles push and shove each other until they say, okay, I'm okay with this frequency. Are you okay? And say, yeah, I'm okay. You stay away from me. We'll throw all our dark matter in the center, because each one of these particles has a dark part. Nobody's ever seen it. So the dark part goes to the center and the white goes around the outside. And I can prove that too, because I'm talking about magnetic particles. Watch this. Well, here, these work good. As I approach this with the magnet, the darkness is going to go to the center and the white will go to the outside. Watch. You see the dark going into the center? You see the white on the outside? Boom. You see that? This is nothing more than magnetic particles. And these are nothing more than magnetic particles when they're shaken. They turn into magnets. I mean, they are magnetic to begin with because they're little basically biomagnets. They have a plus and a minus to them, a positive and a negative. One side's dark side and the other side's the explosive side. But when you start shaking them, they will hit a certain frequency where everybody is happy with everybody else. And even this is a rule of 8. You see this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And sometimes they're perfectly surrounded. And as you keep getting bigger and bigger, all it is more and more particles getting a bigger, bigger, bigger snowball. That's all it is. It's not like, and you start out with one hydrogen is 54, I think, electrons in a ball. It's not one proton and one electron. 1854. And as you go up, they get absolutely phenomenally large. You know, you get up into these unbelievable complexities up in here. But you always can see some form of a rule of 8 if you look carefully, it seems to me. But the higher they get up, the more exquisite the patterns become. And then you get to a certain frequency where there's just so many particles they can't hold together. Now you're up in here, way up in these heavy, 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 heavy particles. They're just gigantic snowballs. They're too big to hold together. That's why they used them to make atomic bombs, because they just took all these big snowballs together. They were so big already, then they crushed them as much as they could do, and then they put explosives on the outside, did that, and then chunks flew off like this. And this is what it kills you, is the chunks. One of these won't hurt you. That's a little tiny thing that bounces off you like static electricity, or you know, the pair of them sure is a photon that'll bounce off you. But once you blow up gigantic particles and they hit you, you're in trouble, because these will damage you badly and literally vaporize you, because they will vaporize the water molecules in whatever they pass through. Because water is a very, very tiny molecule, H2O. All right, anyway. All right, I'm going to just leave it at this. I'm a fixer. I like to fix things. I'm not a wussy. I didn't hide from anything. I volunteered to go in the Army right after the Tet Offensive. The Tet Offensive, I went in 1968. I went in February 12th, I think, February 11th, 1968. And I went up, and I joined up right after January 31st, 1968. And I went in the Army, and thank God I was fortunate, and now I realize there is no, you can't go in and into another person's country and ever get out of there without, a tragedy. It just doesn't, it's not never going to happen. You can't correct an issue in somebody else's country, and they can't correct it either once they have a tyrant in charge, because they're being pushed around by somebody who knows what. And maybe it's not us trying to push them around, but maybe we're trying to help them, but some of them are saying that's not helping, and then they're going to start a fight, and then they're going to raise arms, and we're going to kill them, they're going to kill us, and there's a back and forth. And sooner or later we're going to leave exactly like we're leaving, and we just left minutes ago from Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. There's going to be a slaughter over there. They're going to just do a genocide. And this is what happens every time this happens. And then we say, oh, look at them, they're just vicious people. Well, they had just gone through a situation where they were threatened, and they reacted. People, and it becomes a violent snowball of just hatred and war and division. If we had free energy, just think about that. Who would go to war? Who would say, well, yeah, we're going to get behind Hitler here. He's doing a good job out there of killing all our young men or women and doing all these things and just slaughtering people. And, I don't think this would happen. It's always in a conquest, or not necessarily conquest, but just to try to stay self-interest. Let's put it that way. And then when you get a guy in control, and he's a tyrant, and he's vicious, and he's violent, everything's off. Every bet's off. So, and that's what's happened here throughout history. And the only way I can see to get out of it is free energy for everybody. And I'm talking about free energy, where you have enough energy to power everything you need and to build things, and maybe, even maybe create free, clean water, all without hurting the environment, without having any chance of contamination. It's all done by splitting light. Light, it's just light. And instantaneously it comes back, but you got to get in between the instantaneousness and harvest it before it comes back, and then you have at least 200 times the power, free energy. Now, I guess I'll just leave it at that, but we're going to get into, I'm going to get into the details of how we can do this, because people can do this. Not only, you don't have to be any real genius to do this. This is not a hard thing to do. And it requires a little bit of engineering and some experimenting and, a little bit of this and that. And I will go through all of this and I'll explain it. I can't do it now. I just don't have the facilities to do these things, but I can explain pretty well what needs to be done. And now we need to incorporate the Van de Graaff generator to tweak things, and we need a Tesla coil, maybe, I'm not sure. And then we also need some frequency modulators, like we saw those shaking things. And then we can create our own one. If we shake it at 460 cycles, it's going to do this. If we shake it at 10,000 cycles, it's going to be that. And then if we could lock it there somehow, I don't know if we can, but I'd like to see, maybe.